covering Northern California. You're watching Action News Now, coverage you can count on.
I just decided I'm going high ground, and I just kept going higher and around and around. And
More than 36 earthquakes strike off the coast of Northern California. We hear how people in Redding, nearly 150 miles inland, felt the effects. Plus,
and they've been in limbo for 6 years.
There's just one step left to bring financial and emotional relief to millions of fire survivors. And a suspected stalker turned suspected murderer. How a house fire tipped off deputies. But first,
grandkids at nearly every school in this town, and I can't imagine. I can't.
We learn why a Chico man, according to authorities, shot 2 little boys. And we are tracking that breaking news after a magnitude 7.0 quake rocked the coast, off the coast, I should say, swaying swimming pool waters in our area, as we're seeing here.
But first, we return to the Palermo area, where dozens of law enforcement officers are trying to figure out why this man shot 2 kindergartners.
We do have team coverage right now. Action News Now reporters Camille Acevedo and Brianda Lemus. Camille, what have you learned about the shooters? We learned more about him today.
Right, Alan. So the press conference just wrapped up. I'm right in front of the Butte County Sheriff's Office where the press conference was. Now, they released a lot of information pertaining to the shooter, but first, let's talk about the 2 victims, the 5-year-old boy and the 6-year-old boy who were both shot. Well, Sheriff Corey Honey says that they are both in critical condition and that according to the family, they are in and out of surgeries and that they survived, but it's going to take a while for them to recover. Now, to the shooter, well, they have released the identity as 56-year-old Glenn Litton. Now, they say that he was homeless, he has several mental health issues, and has a very big criminal past. Take a listen.
Several other convictions for various crimes to include theft, fraud, forgery in the 90s and early 2000s.
Now, they say that he had attended the Seventh-day Adventist school in Paradise when he was a kid, but they're still trying to figure out that if there was any connection to the one out in Butte County. They also say that he had made an appointment to go to the Seventh-day Adventist school out in Red Bluff for today, and that was another school that he was looking at. And now they are still continuing to investigate. They say that they have confiscated the weapon and that they are still trying to determine how he got a hold of it, given the fact of his criminal history. He's not allowed to have a weapon, and so they call it a ghost gun, meaning that it is comprised of multiple pieces, making it into one weapon. So they're still trying to identify that. They say that he bounced back from Sacramento to Chico and that he stayed in multiple hotels here in Butte County following up to the shooting that happened yesterday. Now, they're still trying to figure out what exactly was the motive here. They say that they have reached out to his sister and they're trying to get in contact with her in terms of what exactly went down yesterday, and we're going to continue to bring you more information as we get it. Back to you at the station. I'm Camille Acevedo for Action News Now.
Okay, thank you, Camille. Now, Brianda Lemus is live in the Oroville area. Brianda, you spoke to a lot of community members today. How are people doing?
Well, Haley, like everyone who's probably has been watching us, everyone is trying to hold up in high spirits as the 2 boys are still in critical condition. And everyone here in Oroville is just trying to support each other in one way that they can. And that's how one woman, Stephanie Bever, is setting up a candle vigil here at the Oroville Convention Center tomorrow night. Now, when I spoke with her, she told me Oroville has always found a way to come together, from law enforcement to residents who live here. Bever says she lives in Oroville for over 50 years and can't believe what happened in her community. What was your reaction when you found out maybe the ages, or how are you feeling today?
When I found out the ages, it struck even harder because they're just little tiny people. And nobody should go through this, but they're so little. And I am a grandmother of 13, and I have grandkids at nearly every school in this town, and I can't imagine. I can't imagine, and I just feel like these families need us to rally around them.
The vigil here tomorrow is starting at 5:15, right before the tree lighting. Now, the whole goal here, I just spoke to Gracie Stewart a little while ago as she was here setting up. Also, she wants to keep this area as positive as possible. Now, they are accepting donations, and some of those donations that she mentioned that people can bring are gift cards, gas cards, or even grocery cards. So again, the vigil will be right here outside of the Oroville Convention Center at 5:15 tomorrow. In Oroville, Brianda Lemus for Action News Now.
Thanks, Branda. The Northern California Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church did close its schools to allow everyone to spend time with their families. Oroville Police Department says it is upping its presence at all school campuses in the area.
And we continue our breaking news coverage with more than 36 earthquakes off the coast of Humboldt County. You see Eureka here, so just south of Eureka, going out to sea, triggered a state of emergency. The largest was 7.0 magnitude. Now the quake is very strong. A quake like that, I should say, that strong is pretty rare. Officials say that only happens about 15 times a year all over the world. Action News Now reporter Blake Mayfield spoke with those who and may have felt that today in Shasta County. He joins us now in just a bit. Also, Chief Meteorologist Howie Gordon is here. Howie, how many more quakes are we seeing?
They kind of calmed down a little bit, and I'm saying 2.5 or stronger, which the human being won't usually perceive anything smaller than that. But here's what our instrumentation and our trackers are showing. Now, when I pulled this up about an hour ago, you didn't see the reds, and those are the most recent aftershocks. We'll call those aftershocks because those are weaker earthquakes, if you will. But now we had a couple as recent as about 5:44 and I think 5:32. Those are in the red right here. And again, those are about a magnitude 3.1. Now, again, earlier we had a 7.0 just off the coast. We had another 7.0 just off the coast as well. And then we had the 6 that was just inside the coast by a little bit. Now, the bigger the yellow you see, that is the bigger, the stronger the earthquake. But the reds are the most recent. So you're seeing these aftershocks starting to diminish. Now, when I had a 7.1 earthquake in Alaska, we had aftershocks for hours and hours and weeks and weeks. Now, again, the epicenter to most of these earthquakes are a couple hundred miles away. So obviously, if there was a 7 out in the water out there, by the time it reaches us, it's going to shrink in strength, and that's what's happening. So again, these little 3.0s or 3.1s or 2.4s that you'll hardly feel out there, yeah, we're not going to feel those here in the interior portion of Northern California. But for now, they look to be slowing down, but that's not a sign of anything really, because those could continue to go for a couple of weeks. With my experience in Alaska, again, I saw aftershocks and stronger ones, but I was closer to those epicenters of the earthquakes. But for now, yeah, they look like to be toning down at the moment.
Okay, thanks a lot, Howie. Now let's check in with Blake. Blake, did people in Redding tell you they felt the quake?
Alan, it was kind of a mixed bag of reactions here at the Sundial Bridge in Redding. Some said that they didn't feel it, but others said that they definitely did, and they waited until after it was over to get back to whatever it is that they were doing. Now, take a look at this video. This is a video sent to us by a viewer living on a Stage Drive in Chico. It shows the earthquake splashing water out of their pool once the quake arrived. Back here in Redding, one lady says she was at her house in Shasta Lake City and didn't feel a thing, while another says that while she didn't feel any shaking, her family across town did. Another lady said she was showering and only realized an earthquake occurred after she got an alert on her phone. Another man I spoke with says he was getting into his car when the earthquake started.
I got an alert on my phone, and I got in my car, and it was kind of just waving, going back and forth a little bit. Yeah, I could feel it.
I did not feel anything, and I have an old house up in Shasta Lake, and it didn't wiggle or wobble at all.
Now, I was outside personally, actually, at the new Chick-fil-A gathering the report for you guys that you saw earlier on Action News Now. When the earthquake struck, I didn't feel anything personally. The person I was talking to didn't feel anything, luckily. But yeah, so the majority of the people I spoke with said they felt a little bit, if not anything at all. Luckily, no one they knew got hurt. None of their property was damaged, and they were able to go on about their day as usual. Reporting live in Reading, I'm Blake Mayfield. Action News Now.
All right, thanks, Blake. And Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency because of the earthquake, and to help aid recovery. The U.S. Senate also stepped up by reauthorizing the National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program, which would send $10.6 million to FEMA and $100.9 million to the Geological Survey, U.S. Geological Survey, every year until 2028.
A Tehama County woman is dead after deputies say her stalker killed her in her Corning area home. Action News Now reporter Shade Pullen shows us how deputies tracked down the suspect 2 weeks after the murder.
The Tehama County Sheriff's Office tells me that Raquel Luz Hernandez Arcros was murdered by a man that had been stalking her for months.
Sheriff Kane says CAL FIRE rushed out to a house on Craft Avenue in an unincorporated area just outside of Corning on November 30th at 3:30 p.m. And that's when they found Arcros dead inside. Kane says after investigating and speaking with witnesses, they discovered that Arcros was being stalked for months prior to her death by 25-year-old Carlos Alberto Perez. Sheriff Kane says on Tuesday, when they received her autopsy results, it confirmed that she died from a gunshot wound, making her death a homicide.
Detectives determined that on November 30th, 2024, Mr. Perez arrived at Ms. Hernandez's residence with a firearm. Mr. Perez made contact with Ms. Hernandez and shot her, resulting in her death. After the killing of Ms. Hernandez, Mr. Perez attempted to conceal the murder by setting the house on fire using an accelerant.
Kane tells me that Perez was homeless in the Corning area when he killed Arcros. At this time, Sheriff Kane told me that he cannot disclose how the two knew each other or how the stalking began. But he did tell me that even though Perez was stalking her for months prior to her death, no police report was filed.
Sheriff Kane tells me that this death is just another example of how escalated stalking can become.
Anyone who believes that they are being stalked, if they're being followed, if they have this feeling like that there's someone that's continually following them or harassing them, they should report that to their local law enforcement agency. They should not assume it's going to go away. They should take protective action.
Kane says when they arrested Perez for murder yesterday, he also had a ghost gun. He says Perez then admitted to law enforcement that that specific gun was used in the murder. Reporting in Tehama County, I'm Shade Pullen with Action News Now.
Perez is expected to be arraigned tomorrow.
Just one signature from the president will change the lives of many fire survivors. Now, we broke the news yesterday that the U.S. Senate passed the Federal Disaster Tax Relief Act. Now, the bill includes the Protect Innocent Victims of Taxation After Fire Act that was inserted into the larger bill, which makes it so that fire survivors do not have to pay federal taxes on settlement money they receive for their losses. Once the president signs it into law, fire survivors can claim refunds for any taxes paid on settlements received after 2020. An estimated $512 million is expected to be paid out to survivors. New at 6, a key resource for rebuilding park fire survivors is shutting its doors. How you can still access help.
Plus,
a lot of these students come from areas that the safest place they go to every day is their school.
as our community copes with tragedy, we look at what school resource officers could be doing to protect our kids. That's next.